I got a fun guys watching this from YouTube or wherever you get this podcast from. Every time Steve says hacker forum, please take a shot. That's one way to get drunk. And it's only for a 10-second segment.
Welcome to another episode of Bourbon and Data Breaches, where we cover 5 of the most interesting data breaches from this last week and one of our favorite bourbons. I'm Steve.
Divya.
I'm Sean.
Gabby.
And I'm Matt.
And I'm John.
Great. Well, Divya, did anything happen this last week?
Yeah, guys. So crazy week and a half behind us, basically. But the first thing I want to talk about in this episode is the MOVEit attacks. So 8 tech and IT companies targeted in the MOVEit attacks, and it's obviously growing. We heard about Siemens. We heard
Senator Electric's there. There's a ton of them.
Correct. So nearly a month after the discovery of a critical vulnerability in progress, widely used MOVEit file transfer, the impacts from a wave of related cyber attacks and data breaches continue to worsen. Clop is responsible. What are your guys' thoughts on this huge data breach?
So
I'm going to throw two things out there, if you don't mind, Steve, me jumping in there. One, I think it's extremely interesting that other reports also say that they've held on to this for about 2 years, and they've just been so busy with other things that it's just now that we're coming out with it. Which is fascinating to think, like, what else might be out there. And then the other was kind of the hidden story underneath is there are actually companies that came out and said, we were probably affected. And Clop immediately was like, nope, we did not get you. We do not claim at all whatsoever responsibility for that. So they were very clear in their delineation of who they did and who they did not pursue, which I thought was interesting. So those two facts, I think, are hidden in the subtext of this story itself. And I'd love to dive a little bit more into that, why, how, et cetera, that would happen.
Well, so you are skipping over a few of the interesting tidbits that Clop released. One is they said, we're not going to steal any data from governments. Any data that may have stolen from governments, we have securely deleted it. And hospitals. So they are very clearly trying to not be re-evil. And they're like, oh, no, we're not going after hospitals or governments. Like, don't shut us down the way you did re-evil. And then they've also, they haven't been sitting on it for 2 years. They were testing it at the end of 21. So we have evidence, or not we, the security community has evidence that they were testing it in 21. And so they've been sitting on this for a while, but using it, preparing for it. One interesting little piece is they, in January, added Shell to their victim site. A lot of people were like, oh, is this just a repeat of Shell's prior ransomware? Nope. It was Shell showed up once again once they started adding in the MOVEit victims. So we may have seen it in January. No one just knew what was going on.
I remember that phone call, Steve. So, yeah, I would agree. And I think you're exactly right in pointing out they were testing it. So I was a little bit incorrect in my statement there. But it's interesting they've had it for so long. And there's speculation around why, right? Like, why would they sit on it for that long? And is it just they're too busy? They have so many? Or is it, let's get a bigger victim list first, right?
Secretly go after companies using a 0 day. They can just rack up the victims, right? Like if they did it all at once, someone's going to get a firewall trigger. They're going to investigate and they're going to find the 0 day. If they do it slowly over the course of all of 22, I mean, and they got everyone. They got Shell, they got major businesses, they got Department of Health and Human Resources. Like everyone got hit by this.
Yeah, we're at 140 organizations at this point. So, I mean, it's a big thing The speculation that I had seen, and right, who knows exactly, unless we talk to the leaders of the group, was there's actually so much going on that they kind of said, let's put this on the back burner for a little bit, let it slow roll, let's build our victim list. And, we just have so much other stuff we're doing that this isn't top priority. It goes back to one of our BMBs back in January where we talked about project management, priorities, structured organization. Like, is this our top priority? This, though, is huge.
Was it Clop that had, I think it was Clop that had the internal documents leaked? And
Yes. Yeah.
Paid $1 billion in ransom over the course of 5 years. And so this is, don't be deluded by the term gang. This is a corporation, and they purchased a 0-day. And I'm interested in the return on investment on that 0-day, because if they bought the 0-day for a few million, they've more than made up that initial cost in ransoms from victims.
I can't imagine a price they would have paid that they would not have made up the money.
Wait, just a reminder, this is your time to check out Hack Notice, because we are tracking these ransomware gangs and organizations. So you can always go and take a look at what Clop is doing, what ReEvil is doing. One thing I do want to kind of bring up is that I do know that the Harris Health patient and employee information was also exposed in this breach. Now, when a ransomware organization says that we don't specifically go after a healthcare organization, you can still be impacted. Don't think that you just have the golden ticket or something, right?
I think I was wrong. I think they're specifically not going after children's hospitals. So government and sick kids are on the no list. Everyone else is fair game.
Yeah, and I think it's good to point out that it was very opportunistic, right? A lot of times these attacks seem very targeted, but this was one where I could see a situation where they're very opportunistic, where can we take advantage of this? And then going back in hindsight saying, hey, we don't want the same reputation as ReEvil, so we're going to say, hey, we didn't get your data. We don't trust, ransomware groups, so they can say they didn't get it, but that doesn't mean they did.
It's interesting because MOVEit was a software by Perpetual, right? And Perpetual's a private company. This isn't like a
Progress.
Progress, sorry, Progress software. So this isn't like a public protocol that got breached. This is once again a third party breach, right? Progress 0-day, but the people that are on this list is not specifically Progress, it's all of their clients.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Steve. So if you look at kind of the EY breach, it wasn't them who got breached, it was their third party, right? But think about the number where once you expound out to your fourth parties, this really makes a lot more sense and a lot more risk, because they're handling payroll data, they're handling, all of our sensitive data. And that's where a lot of these companies, obviously, if you look at like British Airways, BBC, things like that are claimed victims, it wasn't them, and it wasn't necessarily their MOVEit systems. It was their payroll processor, Zealous, I believe, that was breached. So, you have to look at your third and fourth parties, and that really starts to make a difference.
Yeah, and I think we got to move on now because there's been a lot of spicy events this BNB that we're gonna have to talk about.
All right, story number 2 this evening, you guys. So Wagner Ransomware targets computers in Russia. My time here at Hack Notice, I know that Russian gangs don't necessarily attack on Russia, and this is a very interesting case. And apparently the ransomware drops a note that promotes the paramilitary group and adds, "Let's go to war against Shoigu," maybe? A reference to the general under Russian Vladimir Putin. These are some of the notes. Here's some images that you can see. I am very confused by this. So would you guys go ahead and explain what's going on?
So there have been hacker groups that have gone after Russia, usually anonymous or like Op Russia or different campaigns of hackers getting together going after Russia, but it is rare for a gang to go after Russia, because that's usually where the criminals live and they don't want to be arrested.
Yeah, so one thing I thought was interesting about this story is it felt very rudimentary in the story itself. Like this was kind of a startup, like they target computers, like you target network systems, you target overall like Internet of Things, they're like, we target computers. And not to say it's a rudimentary attack, but it felt like it was very grounds up. Kind of like the rebellion as we saw in the news. Short-lived. I'd be interested if this starts to gain traction. Because it definitely has the possibility of gaining legs.
But the ransomware made no demand for paying, so what is it called when ransomware doesn't ask for ransom?
So that's, I mean, that is very traditional, like malware,
Yeah.
like destructoware, like there have been, think back to the viruses like Code Red that would just go around and infect and destroy without any sort of economic gain.
What about the Cupid virus? Wasn't that the one where it went around and just threw a heart emoji up, and that was it, and then self-destructed back in like 2000?
I mean, Sean asked a good question. Is that hacktivism? The answer is yes, but it's also cyber warfare because they were trying to take over a country. But
Well, is it the next forefront of guerrilla cyber warfare, right?
I mean, so interesting parallels. When Russia invaded Ukraine, they first went after the infrastructure and they took over systems and broke into systems. When Wagner Group tries to take over Russia, sort of in a response, they also went after cyber systems and went after soft assets. So
And
it's all
well, so I would say if it's not trademarked yet, I want to be the first to see GCW, guerrilla cyber warfare, because I love gorillas. So if we can make that a trademark, then let's go for it.
Be right here.
right. I think with that, it's time for the bourbon break. Woohoo! And today's bourbon is Ezra Brooks 99 proof. So Ezra Brooks 99 proof. It's not 100 proof and it's not bottled in bond, but it's very, very close. Divya, what do you know about this bourbon?
Okay, so let me share my screen first. So Ezra Brooks 99 proof bourbon whiskey. Hopefully I'm on the right page. It goes for $19.99, and the product highlights suggest that it's a pure oak barrel aged Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey elevated to 99 proof, charcoal filtered for a smooth, mellow finish. The new Ezra Brooks 99 features the same spicy rye bourbon mash bill taste, but with an enhanced flavor profile delivered by, and it stops at HIN, sorry. It says it's a small batch bourbon, so I think that is good. Food pairings are smoked pork, salty snacks, and dried fruit for some reason. Try to go and find them on the website, but there's a long YouTube video of it, so we're not going to do that. But it says that there's profiles for vanilla, and it's an excellent whiskey for cocktails. So guys, what are your thoughts?
So I may have to challenge the small batch because it is produced by Lux Row, which is one of the largest distillers on the planet. And also I think pork goes with everything. So that's a good food pairing.
Honestly, the
Like,
first time I'm saying
Hey,
that.
try this bourbon with like salty pork and maybe like peanuts.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Dried fruit.
So yeah, I definitely get some vanilla in the nose.
Okay.
That's nice. It's not terribly hot on the nose. So this is one that could sneak up on you. What do you think?
Yeah. Nothing. Happy
Well,
laugh
sip on
first,
it.
I didn't
There's a
do
little
anything.
buttercream. in
Yeah,
there, kind of-
yeah. It's a little buttery.
Yep.
There's some spice on the back end,
Yeah.
Finished.
but
Yep.
up front, I'm getting like really bold flavors, like kind of buttery. There's a good mouthfeel to it as well. It's not like you're drinking like paint thinner, like it's got some substance to it.
Yep.
What do you think?
So what would you say paint thinner tastes like?
So that there
You're
are
comparing it to that.
there are some bourbons that I've had where you're drinking it and it's very thin and
Yeah.
alcohol-y and like it kind of evaporates on the tongue. And so it has like more of a like paint thinner-esque ambiance to it.
Like
And-
acetone.
And this is more like, this is smooth and it lingers.
Definitely lingers.
This is a little hot for me. I don't think it's not hot on the nose, but it is a little bit hotter than like the last one.
From
I
a
tried.
spicy.
Yeah.
So I mean, I feel
Gabby,
it.
do you like it, Gabby?
I-
I'm hearing it lingers and it didn't sound positive.
I'm not sure how many more sips I will continue
Oh
to
my
take.
goodness.
It's not the worst,
Well.
but my esophagus is on
So-
fire.
I really like this. So this is not my first bottle. I bought a bottle
We're well
for
aware,
B and B. I bought a bottle for B and B and I drank that. And then I had to get another bottle for B and B. And like we have some left. No, I poured some of it into a decanter at home. But
Yeah.
but yeah, like I really like this. So like I feel like it's got a bold flavor. It's good, it's robust. I'm typically mixing it with like soda water for a
Be
highball,
good to mix.
like to smooth it out. But it is really good for the price point. And I don't think Divya mentioned this, but
It's $20.
yeah, it's not a bottled in bonds, which would be 4 years. It's a straight, which is 2 years. So it's gonna be a little bit rougher, but like it's almost a bottled in bonds. It's almost 100 proof and it's $20. I was quite impressed. So like I go to the liquor store and I look for bourbons for B&B and it's getting tougher because we're on episode like 112.
It's aired.
And so I saw this and like a good producer, a good price point, good reviews. I think it's a solid bourbon. I've had way worse, and I've had way worse at a much higher price. I would say that this is better than 90% of the sourced bourbons that I've had.
John, how'd you like it?
I did not have it.
I'll let you sip
Um,
with us.
Say what?
So that you took a sip with us. That's why I wanted to ask.
No. I was trying to look up how small batch is brewed.
Yeah.
And just try to get the distinction there.
Yeah, I don't think this qualifies for small batch. They can say that, but I think after
Small batch.
10,000 gallons, it can't be small batch.
What if it is brewed by Divya at this point?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
Anyway, long story short, I highly recommend it if you can find it. It's a great value pick. I think it's great for mixing. It probably makes for a great cocktail. I'm enjoying it straight up, but
Can you hand me the
I'm
bottle?
maybe a little bit more seasoned than Gabby in terms of drinking bourbons straight up.
Right.
So that's what
So I
I
will
was
say I didn't try this exact Ezra Brooks, but I have in the past enjoyed a good Ezra Brooks. I think they make a good quality liquor that sits well in cocktails and straight up.
So they're like a well-known, well-established brands. This was my first time having Ezra Brooks, and I was quite pleased by it. Yeah, it
Nice.
was good.
Yeah, so as you can see, the Steve meter
Mhm.
on this bottle reads that it's a good bourbon because whenever it comes to the office, it's never full. So when it's all the way to the bottom, you know it's a good bourbon.
Sometimes it's full.
Sometimes
If it's full, it's
full,
not
but
good. He doesn't
shit,
like it.
Like
But-
you don't want it.
Looking at you, double oaked.
I remember that one.
Yeah,
That was January.
yeah. And that's been the Bourbon Break.
Okay, solid, guys. So this one is kind of like a story that's been ongoing for a little while. It's really dramatic. It's very spicy. That's why I put it in here. It's kind of like a snapshot of this week in ransomware, but I want to really focus on the Reddit situation, right? So this week, the BlackCat gang claimed to be behind a Reddit data theft attack that the company previously disclosed in February 2023. And I remember seeing this because reddit.com was on my watch list at hacknotice.com. And guess what? I got a breach alert. But anyway, in February, Reddit announced that it suffered a breach where threat actors gained access to some of its systems and were able to steal source code and a limited amount of advertiser data. This is a screenshot from the threat actors. I love the touch of Paulo Coelho, renowned poet, saying a mistake repeated more than once is a decision. Love that for them, but what do we think about this breach?
I think this is an interesting one that kind of ties into the Clop ransomware stuff that we talked about a bit ago. And I know, Sean, you had something to say, but this is one where they had the data for a long time and held on to it. And I think it proves that, like, even once your data's been taken, it's not a one-time event. You need to understand that it's still out there, right? And they still have control of it.
Yeah, I think that's parallels, especially Divya, when we were saying that advertisers from Reddit are impacted by that. Again, it leads to a third-party conversation that one breach can impact multiple companies. It's not the day of the past where you get targeted, you get ransom, and it just impacts you. It impacts your entire supplier ecosystem. So I think that's interesting. The article itself was a little odd to me in that it started out with, it's been a relatively quiet week in ransomware, but when we look at our breach index, there were close to 70 ransomware events. So I think there still is a tendency for people to focus on these big breaches that have big impact and forget the fact that attacks are constantly going on. They're always going on. And if it happens to you, it's a big breach, right?
Yeah.
So I think everyone's missing the key word or phrase in here, which is source code. So everyone should be like DEFCON 1. This is a huge event. So Reddit drives billions of clicks a year. They drive a lot of traffic. Hackers now have the source code for that site. You think of MOVEit. MOVEit comes from 0 days, which comes from analyzing source code if you can get access to it, right? So we're talking about a Reddit breach that got access to source code, and everyone's like, that's fine, not a big deal. Until you hear about the Reddit 0-day CVE that drove everyone's traffic to a phishing site or an infection site where there's some mass spreading of some sort of ransomware. So like, obviously this is all hypothetical and like maybe none of that would happen, but everyone needs to be really careful whenever source code is mentioned, because we've seen what was it? Not Cloudflare, SolarWinds, massive impact from someone changing code. We've seen source code events. We've seen 0 days. This is really concerning, not from what was stolen by its intrinsic properties now, but what it could be used for in the future.
And I think Okta was also a source code breach.
Yeah. Anytime source code is involved, like you basically have to rewrite all of your code to make sure it's not exploited.
So one thing about Reddit in general is how anonymous it is as a platform, right? So you got people going in there and they're just like talking shit or just making points, whatever, without being exposed. How do you think it affects their actual customer or like consumer base? Do you think that they are probably impacted by this as well?
Yeah, I think this will have a lingering effect for Reddit. One is obviously the code review that has to happen. 2 is Reddit's a double-sided marketplace. If the code itself was valuable, then now hackers can make Reddit clones, so that could cut into their market share. But the big point is, if you are trusting Reddit to keep you anonymous and keep your subreddits anonymous, then you may not have that trust anymore, right? And Reddit serves porn, right? Like the big elephant in the room is that Reddit makes a whole lot of traffic based on porn. So
It does?
your porn browsing habits,
Fascinating.
yeah, your porn browsing habits and what you click on and what you comment may soon be made publicly available and tied back to your email address, which is just one step away from being tied to your name.
I have to step away for a little bit.
Yeah,
You gonna sign into your Reddit profile, John?
yeah.
This is part of the broader community revolt that's going on at Reddit, right?
Well, Reddit got really upset about, Redditors got really
Yes.
upset about some of the comments made by the Reddit team members about like not making enough profits off of them.
Trying to get ready to IPO.
Yeah, but this is clearly a problem, and like this could be a horrible happening for Reddit, right? But a horrible happening where you're exposing user data and you're complaining about not profiting enough from those users is going to make for a sticky situation.
Well, and the ransomware demands itself were specifically around because of the API change
Yeah,
that they were requesting, where they charge for it. Significantly charging for things like Reddit Apollo, some of the applications that actually make Reddit a little bit easier to use, you would say, just by utilizing the API. So there was a frustration from the growing user base, and obviously I look at Reddit. But yes, you're right, Matt. It was in a little bit in retaliation for that, but it's interesting that they were able to utilize something from February that had been out there, and then all of a sudden here now they make a demand based on a business decision to change direction and frustrate the users.
One last comment I have about this is I've seen a lot of anonymous threads regarding darknet research and finding breaches on Reddit. And I think that, I mean, is there a way that maybe this was a form of retaliation from a ransomware gang just trying to like shut down Reddit as a more internet scraper instead of like having to go through Tor and, you know, like .onion links and all that?
From my perspective, and Steve, you're obviously well versed in this too. I would say sources show up well behind, I mean days behind what Hack Notice is able to produce from a source perspective. I don't think that this was a retaliation against the speed or the conclusivity of a ransomware breach. I think that this was in retaliation specifically to the API demands itself.
I think that Reddit's system of administration, or the mod system, causes people who are not mods to get very upset. You give certain users admin access to put up or take down certain things. And to Divya's point, so like Hack Notice is very careful to report alleged events in a neutral way, in a transparent way, and to not play favorites, right? We want everyone to understand what's going on in real time. But Reddit's not set up that way. Reddit is set up inherently for the mod to have a bias. And so there could have been certain ransomware gangs that were not being covered by Reddit, or were being covered in a negative light. And so I can see any sort of system like that allowing for discontent and then grudges. Like there's certain hacking groups that don't like that Hack Notice exists, but there's other hacking groups that actually understand that we play a critical role in cybersecurity. And some of them even like the press, right? They're like, oh yeah, everyone now knows how great I am. And so it really depends on how you handle these events. And you got to realize there's explosive personalities involved. It's very easy to piss someone off.
And keep in mind, this is not exclusive to Reddit. It's a systemic not a problem, but it's something that exists from day one of Wikipedia, Twitter, so on and so forth, right? There are multitudes of these platforms that exist where moderation has to exist for different reasons. And there's no real good answer, but at the end of the day, there is, and there's going to be somebody who's against it.
Well, and you're going to see forums fight other forums, and Reddit is a forum. And so we saw it. I don't think we're going to cover it, but we saw breached forums got breached by Ani forums. And so like you've got hacker forums hacking other hacker forums and leaking the data from the hacker forum on the hacker forum. And it's like this stuff happens all the time, and Reddit just got caught up in some of that.
I got a
Right.
fun guys watching this from YouTube or wherever you get this podcast from. Every time Steve says hacker forum, please take a shot. That's one way to get drunk. And it's only for a 10-second segment. So
I would recommend Ezra Brooks 99 as your shot of choice for this episode.
thanks to
Hacker
our
forum.
sponsors.
Yeah. Thank you for our sponsor, Ezra Brooks. Ezra Brooks, please send your bottles for tasting.
All right, guys, I think that was a very good conversation about Reddit. Let's move on to story number 4. So this one right here, American Airlines, Southwest Airlines, it's been a really tough couple of years for the aviation industry. And now there's a pilot data leak of both these two huge airlines in the States. Personal information of 5745 pilots of these two airlines has been leaked due to the incident. And I believe information like social security number, driver license number, passport number, date of birth, airman certificate number, and other government issued identification numbers were exposed. I believe it was a third-party breach, and the vendor's name was Pilot Credentials. Is that correct, Matt?
Yep, pilotcredentials.com.
Yeah. So, what do you guys have to say about this? This is kind of crazy.
So to bridge this gap and all I could think of when I saw this story was the Reddit post, again, bridges to the last story, around the guy who airdropped the photo of the pilot when he was on his airplane, and he airdropped it to everybody of a shirtless pilot, and he was like, ready to fly this plane, and he airdropped it to everybody who was accepting. Has anybody seen that?
Is our marketing?
The pilot did that?
No. Somebody on the plane was sitting in row like 14 or whatever, and he was like ready to fly this plane, and just showed a shirtless photo of a pilot. Just happened to be, on the plane, but it was not the actual pilot. And the pilot had to come on the announcement and was like, we're actually going to take this plane off. We're not, that's not me, FYI. And so that's the only thing I think of when I saw this story.
So
Divvy, I don't know if you can find it, but it is a hilarious story.
So to move quickly through the story, all joking aside, this is really concerning because pilots have instant access to some of the most secure areas in the US.
Yep.
And I'm really concerned about if you have all these details about pilots, who can get into airports, like by stealing identities and committing fraud, and what happens after that. It's a big concern for aviation safety.
Do you think free credit monitoring is the solution?
Nope, that won't do anything. These identities are going to be bought and sold at a premium. someone's gonna go and make a fake badge and see how far they can get into an airport or even into an airplane. Like, this is gonna be a lingering problem.
This is the third breach for American Airlines in 3 years. This third party, it really highlights again that third party vulnerability. It was American and Southwest that got hit the most by this one.
So I would like to understand what this third party actually does for American and Southwest.
I would like to understand why you put all of the pilots' credentials and PII and certificates into a singular third party.
It's also cadet applicants. Yeah.
I did find that photo. So
Oh, no.
Oh my god.
it's just a quick
Oh.
selfie before I fly this plane. Yeah,
My.
that was not the guy. Hopefully his information is not breached. Are we ready
Yes,
to-
that is what was airdropped to the entire plane
Okay, all right.
before they took off.
Yeah, let me just say that if you look at both these airlines, CETA, I think it was a couple of years ago, there was a third party breach again there. If you go to their website still, the first thing that you see on the website is information about security breach. So imagine the time period that they've been dealing with that. Kudos to them for making that highlighted on the front part of their page, but if you go to the co-pilot site, then you don't see that, right? So I think they are primarily responsible for helping airlines recruit pilots. So you can imagine the type of information they would have about that individual.
Gosh, yeah.
Well, I think what you talk about, Sean, is really the degree to which you have a incident response and the degree to the maturity of that incident response itself, right? How mature and how willing are you to accept it versus, what do we do in response to it? And every organization is different, but I think that each one can be different, but needs to be mature enough to actually deal with the situation.
That's right. And that's part of the problem with third parties in general, right? Whenever a third party has a breach, their first activity on their instant response is not to let every partner know that they're having a breach, right? They want to get their arms around it, figure out the story, and then message that out. But when you're dependent on that for services, you can't wait. So that's one of the values that we bring to the market is actually notifying people very quickly about actual breaches. So it's important.
I just don't love all this pilot information being in one place. Like, can we do sandboxing, segmentation, maybe do some like tokenization and encryption? Like, I don't love the quantity and quality of information across multiple airlines being stolen all at once. That really worries me from like a data perspective.
What do you look at data stores like DMV or, the federal, when you do a security clearance, right? All that data has to go somewhere. So what do you do about it, right?
I assume they are encrypting every record separately with hardened hidden keys. They're using tokenization. Like there are hardware and software boundaries you can put between the data that makes it incredibly difficult to get the quality and quantity of information that you're seeing in the story. So like there are technologies that exist if you're handling sensitive data and you should be using it. Like IBM's offered tokenization for 10 plus years. If IBM does it, like it should be something that you do.
100% agreed.
That, we're gonna move on to story number 5. This is the last story of the evening, and I kind of want to make sure that I get your thoughts on this. It's kind of interesting because this happened with parent company Suncor, and some Petro Canada locations are cash only amid cybersecurity incident. And their loyalty program, Petro Points, were also impacted. So they had these makeshift printed documents that says cash only, POS unavailable, not to be confused with piece of shit. It's point of sales, but at both banks and store, no debit, credit, or prepaid cards. What do you guys have to say about this? Because they were out for a long time. So what are your thoughts?
So Canada has a center for cybersecurity. It's like a federal, I guess, level. And they like 3 days before this happened, they said that the number one cyber threat in the gas sector was ransomware, and then they got hit with this.
Oh, shoot.
And so, yeah, it really put everything to a screeching halt. Only cash payments are able to be accepted. Anybody who had preloaded cards for things like car washes or gas credits couldn't use them. And attacking the energy industry seems to be like a theme that we've seen, especially in the last couple of months with a lot of these attacks.
Yeah, it just shows how vulnerable the infrastructure is that you take for granted. You know, we've all been at like a restaurant and their point of sale system goes down and it's like, all right, well, you got to pay cash. And everyone's like, who has cash?
Yeah.
Does anyone have cash?
Hell no.
They're an ATM. So yeah, we all rely on an infrastructure that is incredibly.
I
vulnerable.
always keep cash on hand, hundreds of dollars at my neighbor's house.
There you go.
I only say that so they don't target mine.
Keep cash on your neighbors at all times, just in
Yeah.
case of the hackers.
Exactly.
And I think the bigger picture is that there is a trend to be cashless, right? So we are moving towards a situation here in the States, you know, it's perfectly legal to set up business and only accept credit card payments or other forms of payment. So if there's a widespread issue like that across, you know, banking systems or things like that, that could be a very big problem for us to continue transactions, getting goods. It could be a big issue.
Well, and it's a demand from consumers as well, right? Like consumers want to be cashless. I'm not carrying cash anymore. If you don't accept a card, then I just go somewhere else. But if all card systems go down suddenly, then I'm sort of out of luck, and that's pretty scary.
Well, what's great, oh, go ahead.
Don't know.
This is more than just the consumer side. So they're saying this just might be the tip of the iceberg, the payment issues. They're actually thinking that it could be deeper, and they've seen as recently as Friday that some employees aren't able to log into their own internal accounts. And so I guess as this thing manifests, is there a reason why it started with the consumer payments, you think, Steve? Or how do they kind of spread that attack surface once they're in?
I mean, if you can get access to POS devices, that's where the money is, right? We saw that with Target. Target got infected, all POS devices, like 100 million credit card numbers were stolen. You can get lucrative data, like you can sell credit card numbers at a premium in the darknet. And so you just really have to understand that POS devices need to be hardened, protected, but usually they're some of the weakest infrastructure. I know POS devices were using like Windows XP far beyond the expiration date. So yeah, like hackers would love to take over every ATM on the planet. That's just instant money for them.
So I can tell you up until about 2 years ago, all the ATMs in Europe ran OS2. I don't know if you remember OS2, Steve?
Yeah, from IBM. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
a competitor
Is
to
that
like
after war?
that was a competitor to like Windows 95.
Oh, gee.
Yeah. So it ran OS2, and one of the reasons was nobody developed viruses or malware or could penetrate it because it was such a low penetration market, right? So all the ATMs used to run it. And so Matt, a little bit to your question about how, you know, why would it go this way? Why would it kind of go POS down to core systems? Is that's kind of the way the banking system's built. And this is from my financial world, is you're really looking at accounts that exist to the consumer all the way. It's kind of a reverse pyramid, right? So you have consumer accounts, then you come into high VIP accounts, then you come into teller accounts, then you come into back office operation accounts, and it's a reverse pyramid, right? You're starting to filter down more and more. And then you get into IT accounts, and then eventually you get to core banking accounts, and your core bank is your core system that not only leads you to all of these consumer payments, but it's literally bank to bank payments. You're talking about billions of dollars at hand to make those transfers. So that's the reason, right? Like once you get access and you can start digging deeper and deeper and deeper, that's where it makes sense.
Interesting.
And on that glowing positive note, this has been an episode of Bourbon and Data Breaches. If you liked everything you saw today, you're probably working for Clop. If you hated everything you saw today, that means you live in Canada and you don't have gas. Please like, follow, and subscribe. Till next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.